Write the chemical equation.
It was NaHCO3 to Na2CO3 plus CO2 plus H2O.
Explain why the mass of empty crucible was measured before sodium hydrogen carbonate was thermally decomposed. Justify your reasoning using your experimental data.
The mass of the crucible was way before the substance decomposed because you need to know how much to subtract to get the mass of the baking soda alone. The mass of the crucible was about 14 grams and the mass of the baking soda was about 1 gram. So in the end, the substance lost mass.
How did energy affect the composition of baking soda?
Heat affected the composition of baking soda by allowing the substance to lose mass by giving off CO2.
Use experimental data to prove chemical change took place.
Chemical change took place because the mass of the baking soda went from 1 gram to 0.77 grams and released CO2 in this process.
In this experiment, what can be concluded from the data collected?
In conclusion, if you heat baking soda, it will lose mass because it is giving off a gas known as carbon dioxide.
What are the possible sources of experimental error?
Possible sources of experimental errors include the amount of time we heat a substance, not wearing goggles, and not wearing gloves.
And what information led you to conclude that a gas was carbon dioxide? Justify using quantitative data. Change of pressure versus time.
We used lab quiz to identify the gas being released when the baking soda was heated, which was carbon dioxide. Baking soda also contains carbon and oxygen, so when the numbers increased within a minute of heating the substance, we knew it was CO2.
Write the chemical equation.
For baking soda and hydrochloric acid, it was NaHCO3 plus HCl plus NaCl plus CO2 plus H2O.
What was the purpose of heating the mixture of hydrochloric acid and sodium hydrogen carbonate? What was the excess reactant? Provide the mass of its content before and after heating.
The purpose was to see what kind of reaction would take place and see what substance was produced. The mass before was 18.94 grams, and mass after was 16.98, so it lost mass.
Write the chemical equation.
Chemical equation for the decomposition of potassium chlorate was C3O3 equals C3 plus O2.
Explain how the setup works.
You place the potassium chlorate in a test tube and heat it for 5 minutes. The test tube is connected to a plastic tube that leads to a glass beaker filled with water. In another empty beaker, the water is displaced, is measured to show how much gas is given.
Explain why sodium chlorate is thermodynamically unstable.
Sodium chlorate is thermally unstable because when it's mixed with a stronger acid, it begins to decompose.
Provide the initial mass of potassium chlorate. Calculate the volume of oxygen gas collected. Just kidding. Number
It was 1 gram.
14. How can you clarify that it's oxygen gas?
We can clarify that it's oxygen gas because oxygen is in the equation and on the product side it is isolated.
15. What factors can influence the outcomes of the experiment and how?
Some factors include not using the right amount of potassium chlorate, heating the substance for the wrong amount of time, and not fully closing the plugs to the test tubes.
16. Write the chemical equation.
Chemical equation for dehydration of ethanol was C2HSOH plus Al2O3 equals C2H4 plus H2 plus Al2O3.
In this lab, why was the catalyst aluminum oxide needed?
If ethanol vapor is passed over heated aluminum oxide powder, the ethanol is essentially cracked to get ethane and water vapor.
Which gas was produced from dehydration of ethanol reaction? How can you verify what gas is produced?
Hydrogen, because it's isolated in the equation.
What are similarities and differences between lab 1 and lab 3?
Yes, and lab 4.
lab 4.
The similarities are every substance lost mass and there was gas given off. The differences were that it started with different masses and there were different gases given off.
What are the similarities and differences between lab 1, lab 2?
Similarities were they're both involved baking soda, both produced H2O and CO2. and they both lost mass. Differences were that lab 1 used heat and lab 2 used acid to heat